Welcome to the Wellness Lab Digest, where we help you to absorb powerful, life-changing insights from top wellness experts with our daily, bite-sized wellness podcast summaries. Each episode is packed with distilled, powerful takeaways to boost your health and well-being. To support this podcast, please scroll down on whatever app you're listening on. Ratings and reviews are helpful. Even better, just send the show to a friend. Or check out our sponsors at the bottom of the page, or simply click the Support the Show link.
Welcome to another deep dive. We got a request from a listener who wants to know more about how exercise affects the heart.
So the good, the bad, all that.
Exactly. And luckily for us, we've got an awesome interview to dig into with cardiologist Dr. James O'Keefe on the Peter Attia Drive podcast.
Yeah, I mean, Dr. O'Keefe, he's like the guy when it comes to longevity and heart health, right? Like he's done tons of research on exercise and how it impacts, how long we live and all that.
He's got some interesting points, I've got to say.
Oh, yeah?
Some of them are a bit counterintuitive, too, which I always find fascinating. Like, we always hear that we need to be exercising like crazy.
Right, more is better.
Exactly. But he makes a pretty compelling argument for how just a little bit of exercise, even like 15 minutes a day, can actually make a huge difference.
Yeah, that's one of those things that I think really resonates with people because we're all so busy. And it's like, okay, well, if I could just squeeze in 15 minutes, that's like manageable.
Exactly. And then on the flip side, he also talks about how too much intense exercise, especially as we get older, might not be such a great thing.
Yeah, especially the long-term effects, right?
Right. So it's all about finding that sweet spot. And then, get this, he even talks about how the social aspect of exercise can be a secret weapon for heart health.
The social aspect, yeah.
That's so interesting. I know. Like, who knew that hanging out with your buddies while you play tennis could actually help you live longer?
Right. It's like exercise and socializing, two birds, one stone.
Exactly. All right, well, I'm definitely intrigued. Let's dive into some of the details from the interview.
Okay, so he starts off by comparing the heart to an engine, which I think is a really helpful analogy.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah.
Because just like an engine, we wouldn't expect it to run smoothly without the right fuel, right?
Totally. Or like regular maintenance,
Yeah.
It's got to keep pumping for our whole lives.
Okay, yeah, that makes total sense. So what does that look like when we talk about the heart?
Well, one thing he talks about is cardiac output.
Cardiac output.
Okay.
Which is basically the amount of blood your heart pumps out every minute.
Okay.
And it's calculated by multiplying your heart rate by the amount of blood pumped with each beat.
Okay.
Which is called your stroke volume.
Oh, okay. I've heard of stroke volume. Yeah.
So just to, put that in perspective, as you're sitting here listening to us right now, your heart is pumping around 5 liters of blood per minute.
Whoa. 5 liters. That's crazy. I never really think about it,
Right. And then, think about when you start exercising.
Oh, yeah.
Like elite athletes, they can reach a cardiac output of 40 liters per minute.
Wait, 40 liters?
That's 10 gallons?
That is insane.
Yeah, it's crazy what the body can do.
It really is. Okay,
Yeah.
so we've established that the heart is a pretty powerful engine.
For sure.
But then Dr. O'Keefe introduces this idea of a reverse J curve when it comes to exercise and heart health.
The reverse J curve, yeah.
What is that?
So it's basically saying that exercise, just like, with medicine, there's an optimal dose.
So a little bit is really good for us. Like he says just 15 minutes of brisk walking each day can drastically cut your risk of heart disease.
So you're telling me I don't have to be training for a marathon to be healthy?
No, not at all. In fact, he suggests that constantly doing extreme endurance exercise, especially as we age, could actually be bad for our hearts in the long run.
Really? So all those super intense workouts could actually be backfiring on some people.
Yeah, it seems counterintuitive, right?
It does.
Because we think more exercise is always better.
Right.
But he explains that overdoing it can actually stretch and scar the heart chambers.
Oh, wow.
And, can increase those free radicals and inflammation and stuff.
And I think he even mentioned that it can make you more likely to develop irregular heartbeats.
Yeah, like atrial fibrillation.
Right. That's pretty scary stuff.
It is. And he actually gives an example of a real-life example of this happening.
Oh.
He talks about Micah True.
Micah True, okay.
The ultra runner who was featured in the book Born to Run.
Yeah.
This guy was incredibly fit, could run distances most of us couldn't even imagine. But after he passed away, suddenly an autopsy showed that his heart was dilated and scarred.
Oh, wow.
Most likely from years of extreme training.
That's a sobering thought.
It is. It really highlights the importance of finding that balance.
Right, right. So if too much running or cycling or whatever isn't ideal, what does Dr. O'Keefe suggest we do instead?
Well, this is where it gets really interesting because he talks about this study, the Copenhagen City Heart Study,
Okay.
which followed thousands of people in Denmark over decades.
Wow, decades.
And what they found was that people who played social sports like tennis, badminton, soccer, actually lived longer than those who did solo activities like running, swimming, cycling.
Wait, so playing tennis can help me live longer?
It seems that way.
I'm sold. Sign me up. But seriously, why would that be?
Well, there are probably a few reasons. Those social sports, they use different movements and work various muscle groups.
So it's not just that same repetitive motion over and over again.
Exactly. Plus,
Yeah.
there's the social connection, like you're hanging out with your friends, having fun, and that's good for your heart, too.
Yeah, it's like a total mind-body experience. It's
Yeah.
not just about how hard you push yourself. It's about enjoying yourself.
Exactly. And Dr. O'Keefe, he really encourages us to, add more play into our exercise routine.
More play. I like that.
Yeah, instead of always grinding it out,
Totally. It's easy to get caught up in hitting certain goals and pushing limits.
Right,
But maybe it's time to try something new, something fun.
for sure.
That's good for both my body and my mind.
Yeah, absolutely. And, exercise is just one piece of the puzzle.
Oh, right, right. Of course, of course.
He also emphasizes that what we eat plays a huge role in heart health.
Well, yeah, diet is always a big topic. So what does Dr. O'Keefe recommend? What's his go-to diet for a healthy heart?
He's a big fan of the Mediterranean diet.
The Mediterranean diet, oh, classic. Everyone loves a Mediterranean diet. It's more of a lifestyle than a diet at this point.
Right.
It's very popular.
It is. And he specifically recommends what he calls the Pesco Mediterranean diet.
Pesco Mediterranean. So is that like the Mediterranean diet but with extra fish?
Yeah, basically. Lots of fruits and vegetables, olive oil, nuts, whole grains, and of course, delicious fish.
Yeah, sounds pretty good to me.
Yeah, it's not bad, right?
Not bad at all.
And there's actually a lot of science to back it up.
Yeah.
He talks about this study, the Predimen study, that found that people following a Mediterranean diet were significantly less likely to have a heart attack or stroke or die from cardiovascular disease.
Wow. So it's not just about preventing problems. It's about actually living longer.
Exactly. It's about overall health and longevity. And the study also found that the Mediterranean diet can help with things like brain function and reducing the risk of type 2 diabetes.
Okay, so now we're talking about a diet that's good for your heart and your brain.
Exactly. And what's interesting is he doesn't buy into the whole low-fat craze that's been so popular for decades.
I mean, fat is an important part of our diet.
Exactly. It's about choosing the right types of fat, not avoiding it altogether. He's a big advocate for olive oil, which is packed with polyphenols,
Polyphenols.
which are these powerful antioxidants.
Okay.
He also recommends nuts, avocados, and fatty fish, like salmon and sardines.
Yeah, those are all pretty tasty.
Right. Way more appealing than a low-fat processed food diet.
Totally. And here's another thing that surprised me. Dr. O'Keefe doesn't routinely restrict salt for his patients.
I know. It's like everyone thinks salt is the enemy when it comes to heart health.
Right. You're supposed to be watching your sodium like crazy.
But his philosophy is that if you're eating mostly whole, unprocessed foods, they're naturally lower in sodium anyway.
Mm.
So he recommends just salting your food to taste.
Okay, so it's more about not overthinking it and just enjoying your food.
Yeah, exactly. Focus on the quality of your food rather than obsessing over every little detail.
I like that. That feels more sustainable to me.
It does.
It's not as restrictive.
Yeah.
All right, so we've talked about finding the right amount of exercise, having fun with it.
Yeah.
We've got the Pesco Mediterranean diet on the menu. What else? What other gems did Dr. O'Keefe share?
Well, there are a couple of minerals that he's particularly passionate about when it comes to heart health. Magnesium and potassium.
Magnesium and potassium, okay. I've definitely heard those are important, but why does he highlight them specifically?
Well, he points out that our ancestors who ate a diet rich in wild plants and animals got way more magnesium and potassium than we do today.
Really? That makes sense, yeah. Our modern diet is so different.
Totally. And he believes that most of us are probably deficient in these essential minerals.
Okay, so how do we fix that? How do we get more magnesium and potassium?
Well, he recommends getting magnesium through both food and supplements. Nuts are a good source of magnesium, he says. And he also suggests considering bone meal supplements.
Bone meal.
Yeah, because it provides calcium in a more natural form called calcium hydroxyapatite.
Calcium hydroxyapatite. Wow, that's a mouthful. What is that exactly?
So it's basically the type of calcium found in bones.
Okay.
And he believes that getting it from a natural source like bone meal is more beneficial than taking like a supplement derived from rocks.
Interesting. So it's like instead of taking isolated nutrients, he's advocating for a more holistic approach.
Exactly.
Trying to mimic what we would get from whole foods.
Exactly. It's a really interesting way to think about it.
It is. All right, so we've covered exercise, diet, even some interesting supplements. I feel like we've learned so much already.
We have.
But there's more, right? I know Dr. O'Keefe also talked about medications that can help with heart health.
Oh, yeah, definitely. He goes way beyond the standard statins that everyone always talks about.
Okay, well, I'm definitely ready to hear about that. But I think we'll save that for part 2 of this deep dive. Okay, so last time we left off talking about diet and all that good stuff.
Yeah, the pesco-Mediterranean diet.
Right. But I know Dr. O'Keefe also had some things to say about medications that can help with heart health.
Oh, he did. And it wasn't just the usual statins either.
Yeah, statins are kind of what everyone thinks of when they hear heart medication.
Totally. But he actually talked about some meds that are used for diabetes that have really amazing benefits for the heart and kidneys, even if you don't have diabetes.
Wait, diabetes meds for heart health? How does that even work?
I know, right? It seems counterintuitive, but the science is pretty cool. He specifically talked about SGLT2 inhibitors.
SGLT2 inhibitors.
Yep.
I think I've heard that name before. What are those exactly?
They might sound complicated, but think of it this way. Your kidneys are like bouncers at a club, and sugar is trying to get in.
Okay, I like this analogy.
Right. So the bouncers, they only let in a certain amount of sugar, right?
Right, got to keep things under control.
Exactly. And SGLT2 inhibitors, they're basically like telling those kidney bouncers to be a little stricter.
Stricter bouncers, okay.
Yeah, so some of that sugar doesn't make it into the club, meaning it ends up leaving your body through your urine.
So less sugar in the bloodstream.
Exactly.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And it sounds simple, but it has all these positive effects on your health.
Like what kind of benefits are we talking about here?
Well, it can obviously lower blood sugar, which is great for people with diabetes. But it's also been shown to improve heart function and protect the kidneys, even in people who don't have diabetes.
I remember Dr. O'Keefe even mentioned that he takes an SGLT2 inhibitor himself and he doesn't have diabetes.
He does. He's a big believer in them. In fact, he said that when it comes to managing type 2 diabetes, he actually thinks SGLT2 inhibitors are more important than insulin.
Whoa, more important than insulin. That's a pretty big statement.
It is. And he actually calls insulin an obesity hormone. Says we want to keep our insulin levels as low as possible.
Oh, that's interesting. Why is that?
Well, insulin's main job is to store fat. And with type 2 diabetes, your body becomes resistant to insulin, so the pancreas keeps pumping out more and more insulin, trying to do its job, but it just leads to this vicious cycle.
So it's like a losing battle. The more insulin you have, the more resistant you become.
Exactly. And that's why SGLT2 inhibitors are so helpful. They offer a way to lower blood sugar without needing to rely on all that extra insulin.
Okay, that makes sense.
And they have some other cool side effects, too.
Side effects. I thought those were usually bad.
Well, in this case, they're good. He mentioned that they can actually help you burn belly fat and increase your ketone levels.
Now you're talking my language. Ketones, fat burning, sign me up. But seriously, how does that work?
Basically, by lowering blood sugar and insulin levels, the SGLT2 inhibitors kind of shift your body into a fat-burning mode.
Like flipping a metabolic switch.
Exactly.
This all sounds amazing. Are there any, actual downsides to these medications?
The most common side effect is an increased risk of yeast infections, especially for women.
Oh, okay. Not ideal,
Right.
but probably manageable, right?
Yep, definitely. And, some doctors are worried they might increase the risk of urinary tract infections or kidney problems, but those fears haven't really been confirmed in the studies.
Good to know. I'm definitely intrigued by these SGLT2 inhibitors.
They're definitely changing the game in the world of heart health. But that's not all. There's another type of diabetes medication Dr. O'Keefe is excited about. GLP-1 agonists.
GLP-1 agonists. Okay, I have to admit, I haven't heard of those. They're pretty cool. They basically mimic a hormone that helps regulate blood sugar and appetite. They tell your pancreas to release more insulin when you need it and slow down the release of glucagon, which raises your blood sugar.
So they're working on multiple fronts to keep your blood sugar balanced.
Exactly. And just like SGLT2 inhibitors, They have benefits beyond just blood sugar control.
I think I read that one of them, semaglutide, was even approved by the FDA for weight loss.
You did. Dr. O'Keefe actually calls them wonderful drugs for weight loss because they help people feel full and satisfied so they naturally eat less.
So they're not just managing blood sugar, they're actually tackling the root of the problem, which is, overeating.
That's the idea.
Huh.
And get this, he's even using them in combination with SGLT2 inhibitors for people struggling with weight, even if they don't have diabetes.
Wow, so this combo is like a double whammy for metabolic health.
Right. Improving blood sugar control, reducing insulin resistance, and helping people lose weight.
It's pretty incredible. Okay, so we've got these really promising diabetes meds that can also help with heart health. But what about statins? I feel like we can't talk about heart medications without mentioning statins.
Of course. Statins are definitely the most commonly prescribed heart medication. They're super effective at lowering cholesterol, but they've also become kind of controversial.
Yeah, I've heard mixed things. Some people love them. Some people say they have all these terrible side effects. What does Dr. O'Keefe have to say about them?
Well, he acknowledges that they can have side effects, like muscle aches and cognitive issues. But he's still a big believer in their effectiveness, especially for people who've already had a heart attack or stroke.
Right. He said they've been studied extensively, and the evidence really supports their use for preventing future heart problems.
Exactly. He said there's no other class of medication that's been so rigorously tested.
So they definitely have their place. But it sounds like he doesn't think everyone needs to be on a statin.
That's right. He wouldn't recommend them for everyone, particularly those at low risk. He talked about the calcium score, which measures plaque buildup in your arteries. If you have a 0 calcium score, meaning minimal plaque, he wouldn't necessarily recommend a statin.
So it's not one size fits all. It's about figuring out your individual risk factors.
Absolutely. And he also talked about some alternatives to statins, like Attia and PCSK9 inhibitors.
Okay, I've heard of Attia. What are PCSK9 inhibitors?
They're pretty cool. They basically help your liver remove LDL cholesterol, the bad cholesterol, from your bloodstream more effectively.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah. He's a big fan of those, especially the PCSK9 inhibitors.
I think he mentioned that he even takes Attia and a PCSK9 inhibitor himself, and so does Dr. Attia.
They do. They like to practice what they preach. And they're both very data-driven, so you know they wouldn't be taking those medications if they didn't truly believe they were safe and effective.
That's reassuring to hear. So it sounds like they're trying to shift the focus away from just automatically prescribing statins for everyone and move towards a more personalized approach.
Exactly. And that personalized approach applies to how doctors assess your risk for heart disease, too. Dr. O'Keefe doesn't think those standard 10-year risk calculators are very helpful.
Yeah, I've heard those can be pretty inaccurate. What's wrong with them?
He thinks they're too short-sighted. They don't consider the long-term picture of your heart health.
Right, our health is always evolving. A 10-year snapshot isn't going to tell the whole story.
Right. So he looks at your family history, your lifestyle, and other biomarkers like ApoB levels, which can give a more accurate picture of your risk.
ApoB levels, what are those?
It's basically a measurement of the number of apolipoprotein B particles in your blood, which carry cholesterol. High ApoB levels can increase your risk for heart disease.
Huh, interesting. I'll have to ask my doctor about that at my next checkup.
Good idea. Now, before we move on from diet completely, I did want to circle back and mention one more thing that Dr. O'Keefe is really passionate about. Omega-3 fatty acids.
Oh, yeah, omega-3s. Those are good for your heart, right?
They are. But Dr. O'Keefe thinks most people aren't getting enough, especially EPA and DHA, which are the types found in oily fish.
I take a fish oil supplement sometimes, but I'm not sure if it's enough. How much does he recommend?
He actually suggests much higher doses of EPA and DHA than what's usually used in studies, like 2 to 4 grams per day.
Wow, that's a lot more than what's in most fish oil pills I see at the store.
It is. But he thinks it's necessary to get the full benefits, especially for brain health. He's really excited about the potential of omega-3s for preventing things like depression, ADHD, and even dementia.
Wow, brain health too. That's amazing.
Yeah, it's not just about the heart. And they're safe and well-tolerated, too, as long as you're getting them from a good source.
Didn't Dr. O'Keefe say he's involved with a company that makes omega-3 supplements?
He did. He's the chief medical officer for a company called Cardiovascular, which makes a high-quality omega-3 supplement.
Oh, cool. So he really walks the walk.
He does. It's inspiring.
Right.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. SGLT2 inhibitors, GLP-1 agonists, statins, omega-3s. Anything else on the medication front before we move on?
Oh, he also briefly touched on something else he's really excited about for brain health.
Curcumin.
Curcumin. Isn't that the stuff in turmeric?
Yep, it is, and there's more and more research showing that it may be helpful in preventing Alzheimer's disease.
Wow, Alzheimer's is such a scary disease. It's good to know there might be things we can do to help prevent it.
It is. It's a complex topic, but the research on curcumin is definitely promising.
I know you're really interested in the research on curcumin, too. Maybe we could do a whole deep dive on that sometime.
That's a great idea. We could definitely explore that further another time. But for now, I think we've covered a lot on medications and supplements for heart health.
We have. This has been so informative. We've learned about all these alternative medications, the pros and cons of statins, the importance of personalized risk assessment, and the potential of omega-3s and curcumin for both heart and brain health.
It's like a crash course in cutting-edge cardiology.
It is. But I think the biggest takeaway is that there's just so much more to heart health than we realize. It's not just about taking a pill or popping a supplement.
Totally. It's about understanding how all the pieces fit together. Exercise, diet, lifestyle, and medication.
It's about taking a holistic approach and figuring out what works best for you as an individual.
Exactly. And that actually leads perfectly into our final part of this deep dive. Let's take all of this information and distill it into some key takeaways and leave our listener with some things to think about.
Sounds good. Let's wrap it all up in part 3. Okay, so we've talked about a lot when it comes to exercise and heart health.
Yeah, we've been through a lot.
A lot of info from Dr. O'Keefe.
Definitely. I feel like I need to go for a run or something after all that.
I know, right? It's a lot to take in, but it's all so fascinating.
Yeah, it really is.
So as we kind of wrap things up here, what do you think are some of the most important takeaways for our listeners to remember?
Well, for me, that thing about the dose of exercise, how more isn't always better.
Oh, yeah.
That was a big one.
The reverse J curve.
Yeah, exactly.
It's so easy to think that you have to just push yourself to the limit all the time.
Right.
But it sounds like that might not be the best approach, especially as we get older.
Yeah, it's all about finding that sweet spot, right?
Totally. And I love what he said about social sports being so beneficial.
Oh, yeah, that was a good one.
Tennis, badminton, all that.
It just makes so much sense.
You're getting your exercise in.
And you're having fun with friends.
Exactly. So it's
Yeah.
like a win-win.
It is.
You get the social connection, the stress reduction.
All good for your heart.
Exactly. So it's not always about, going to the gym and grinding it out.
Yeah.
Sometimes the best exercise is the kind that you actually enjoy and that makes you feel good.
Totally. And speaking of feeling good, we can't forget about the pesco-Mediterranean diet.
Oh, yeah, the delicious part of the equation.
Right. Past the olive oil.
I'm all about it. It's a good reminder that healthy eating doesn't have to be bland and boring.
Nope.
It can actually be quite delicious.
It can be.
And I was surprised to hear that Dr. O'Keefe isn't so strict about salt.
I know. I thought salt was the enemy.
Right. Like all those years of being told to watch your sodium intake.
Exactly.
But it makes sense if you're eating mostly whole foods, you're probably not getting that much sodium anyway.
You're not, yeah. It's more about the quality of the food than those strict rules.
Exactly. So we've got exercise, we've got diet. What about all those medications?
Oh, yeah, the medications. There were some interesting ones there.
Those SGLT2 inhibitors and GLP-1 agonists, those were really eye-opening.
Weren't they?
I had no idea diabetes medications could be so beneficial for heart health, even if you don't have diabetes.
Yeah, it just shows you how much medicine is always advancing.
Yeah. It's important to stay informed and to have those conversations with your doctor.
Definitely. Be proactive about your health.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave our listeners with something to think about.
Okay.
How can you take all this information and create a lifestyle that really supports your heart health?
Right. A lifestyle that feels good.
Yeah, and that's sustainable, something you can stick with long term.
I think it's about finding that balance.
Oh, yeah.
Pushing yourself, but also giving yourself grace.
Right.
Enjoying food, but also nourishing your body.
Exactly.
And being open to new ideas, but also, trusting the science.
Well said. It's been a really great discussion, and I hope our listeners feel empowered to take charge of their heart health.
Me too. It's never too late to start making those changes.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. We'll see you next time for another exciting exploration in the world of health and wellness.
Thank you for listening to the Wellness Lab Digest. If you receive value from the podcast, I have 3 asks of you. 1, share the show on social media with your friends and tag the show at the Wellness Lab Digest on Instagram. Number 2, please leave a rating and review in whatever app you're listening on. And last but not least, please let me know what topics you would like us to cover in the future. You can contact me at empoweringmen.org/contact. And right now we have a free ebook to get you started on your wellness journey as well. That's empoweringmen.org/contact. To support this podcast, check out our sponsors at the bottom of the page or simply click the Support the Show link.